What is up, plant people? Hey, it's time once more for the Planthropology Podcast, the show where we dive into the lives and careers of some very cool plant people to figure out why they do what they do and what keeps them coming back for more. I'm Vikram Baligi, your host and your humble guide in this journey through the green sciences. And as always, my friends, I am so happy to be with you today. Hey, I have to apologize up front for my voice. I have had strep and an upper respiratory thing going on, and I know I sound a little bit like a bullfrog. Maybe you like it. I don't know. Tell me if you like it. But the show must go on. The show must go on because it has done a lot of not going on because of technical difficulties and stuff. So I wanted to get today's episode out. And this should be a fairly short one, but spring has springed, my friends. And I don't talk about the time when these are recorded a lot, but it is March of 2023 and it's spring, more for some of us than others. And in some places it's already hot. So summer has already showed up, but plants are growing, the birds are birding, the moths are bugging, and all this stuff is happening. So I wanted to do a quick episode of a few of my top garden tips for spring, things that you can start working on and getting ready for spring planting. And maybe you're in a place where it's warm and you've already started planting your garden. You've already got fruits and vegetables and flowers and stuff out. And if that is the truth, I'm jealous of you because we've had false spring here. And even though we're a week and change into it, we've had a couple of freezes since. And I'm normally not like brave enough to plant my tomatoes and my peppers and my warm season stuff till about the 1st of May here in Lubbock, Texas, where I live. But it's going to vary widely. So these are going to be some general garden tips that are things that I think about as I'm going into spring. But I also have actually a really exciting announcement at the mid-roll. So stay tuned for that. It's really cool. It's a project I've been working on for a year, and I can't wait for you to hear about. But get ready. Grab your gardening trowels and your gloves and your pruners and a nice frosty glass of lemonade. And get ready for episode 93 of the Planthropology Podcast, Spring Garden Tips 2023. Alrighty. I'm so happy it's spring. This is the time of spring, actually, where I am in West Texas, where it's a little depressing because the bulbs are coming up. So we have tulips and daffodils and hyacinths and crocuses and a lot of other things blooming. And we have a lot of trees blooming. But I am not confident in planting flowers and veggies and stuff yet. Now, there's some things that can grow in the ground already, things that will tolerate a light frost, some of our cool season herbs, some of our spring flowers, but like tomatoes, nah, basil, nope, peppers, nope, eggplants. So there's a lot of things that I have growing in the greenhouse that are ready to go almost, but we're 2 or 3 weeks probably. Late April is usually relatively safe, even though where I am, I have seen hard freezes on May 5th, which is terrible, terrible, terrible. But that's okay, because wherever we are, eventually it's going to be time to start doing some spring planting. But even outside of that, even if you haven't been able to plant yet, even if it's not quite time, there are things you can start doing to get ready, to prepare your gardens and everything else. So we're going to go through a few of these. I'll probably do, I don't know, 2 or 3 up front. We'll do a quick mid-roll, and then I'll do 2 or 3 at the end. So number one is inspect your garden. A lot of times during the winter, we start to develop problems. Now, these problems could be in terms of winter kill on plants. It could be in terms of damage from wildlife, damage from freezes. So you should start inspecting your garden now, regardless of when you're going to plant. Knowing what you're dealing with is really the way to go. So the things that I like to look for first are irrigation problems. So over the winter, sometimes, we have lines freeze and crack. Maybe we have sprinkler heads that aren't working as well as they should. Maybe we have drip line that has been chewed on by squirrels and other small animals that are looking for water and things through the winter. And that's fine. That happens. That is part of the process. But I would recommend at this time of the year, kicking on your irrigation system whatever that looks like for you. You may water from a hose, you may water through drip line, you may have overhead sprinklers. It doesn't really matter. Whatever it is that you use to irrigate your garden, make sure it's working. And if you don't have a good plan for irrigation, now's a really great time to start putting one together. Now, I don't know where you live, and you may live in a place where it rains once a week, and you get these nice calm showers, and it gardens and it feeds your garden and waters your plants and brings everything back to life. Once again, I am jealous of you, my dear friend. I am, because I don't live in that place. The place I live, we have gotten an inch or maybe an inch and a half of rain, and it's the end of March this year, right? So it's dry, it gets hot, it's windy, and our gardens have to be irrigated. We just cannot have success in our gardens here without some supplemental irrigation. It's a problem. And so we have to start figuring out how to make sure everything works. So check your hoses, audit your sprinkler system, turn on all of your sprinkler zones, and make sure the heads are spraying correctly, that they're not clogged, that they're not broken, that they're not spraying into the street, that you're getting good coverage. All of those things are really important. Another big thing to know is what is the precipitation rate of either your sprinklers or your drip line or really anything else that you're dealing with in the garden. The way to do that, there's actually a lot of ways to go about that. But what I like to do is what's called a catch can test. So you can do this either under a drip line or under an overhead, spray sprinkler. Get some like tuna cans or soup cans or whatever you have that's straight walled and fairly consistent in size. You're going to go out and spread them evenly throughout your zone, whether that is putting it under a dripper, like under a drip line emitter, or spread out evenly between your sprinkler heads. Figure out what that is. It doesn't matter. However you want to arrange them, just make sure they're fairly even and well distributed. Turn on your sprinklers or your drip line and let them run for like 15 minutes. And then at the end of 15 minutes, turn it off, grab a ruler and measure the amount of water that was collected in your can, multiply that by 4, and you have your hourly precipitation rate. What that tells you is like, okay, if I need to put an inch of water on my lawn or my tomatoes or whatever else during the growing season, I can figure out how long I need to run my system to meet the irrigation needs of my plants. That's really useful information. That's good to know. But again, then look for breaks. You don't want to be wasting water, so make sure everything's spraying where it's supposed to be and everything else. Other things to look for is limb breakage. This is really a good time to go clean dead wood out of your trees or clean up some of your plants where maybe some damage has happened over the winter months from ice or wind or anything else. It's a good time to look at areas where maybe mulch has floated away or moved. It's a great time to start replenishing that and just doing overall inspections and maintenance of your garden. Hardscaping elements too, walkways, benches, fences, whatever else is sort of a permanent structure in your garden. It's a great time to start fixing that up. The second thing I like to think about is doing a cleanup, whether that is picking up leaves out of your beds, or picking up dead branches, or cleaning out plants from last season, or whatever else that has sort of been left over from the previous year or from the winter. It's a great time to clean up the garden. Because if you go in and you have clean beds, clean planting spaces, and everything else, your plants are going to be healthier. You run less risk of disease. You're more efficient with your water and your fertilizer and everything else. Now, the one caveat I would throw out there is don't throw away free nutrients. So leaves in the landscape, grass clippings, anything that was like a leaf at one point breaks down into nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and all the other nutrients that your plants need. So you may not want to just leave a solid mat of leaves out there, but run a lawnmower over them. Run them through a chipper shredder if you have one. At the very least, what you can do is pick up all of those leaves and things and throw them in a compost pile. Those will start breaking down, and it's just free nutrients that you can add back into the landscape. The worst thing I think we can do, not the worst thing, but one of the worst things we can do in the landscape is take all these rich natural resources that are there already and throw them in a bag and send them to a landfill, where they're not going to do anyone any good until that bag eventually breaks down. And then there's some gross sludge inside, and nobody likes that. So addressing those needs in your garden, making sure that those things are taken care of and that everything is clean will make you a lot more successful. The third thing that I really like to think about when I'm prepping for my spring garden is getting a soil test. Now, I talk about this a lot, but soil testing is one of the best ways to make sure that you're being successful in your garden. Because when we think about fertility and making sure that our plants have the resources they need, making sure that they're fertilized well is important. But we don't know how much we need to fertilize until we have figured out what's actually in our soil, right? And the way to do that is to get a soil test. Now, they sell at home soil test kits. I don't love them. They're not as specific as I feel like we need them to be, and they don't come with recommendations generally. So the way you take a soil test is you find a representative area of your garden that you're wanting to work with. So say it's a flower bed that you're going to grow sort of the same thing in, vegetables, maybe tomatoes and peppers, whatever. And what you're going to do is over the sort of area of that similar area, you're going to take 5 or 10 6-inch deep soil samples. Now, scrape off any organic material, whether it's like leaves and roots from grass or mulch or whatever else. You're going to scrape that off and get your garden trowel and just take a 6-inch deep sample, like 5 or 6 different places. And then you're going to mix those together. You're going to lay that soil out on a brown paper sack or a trash bag or something and let it dry out. You're going to put it in a quart bag and you're going to find your closest soil testing lab. And you can just Google soil test lab near wherever you are. A lot of times in bigger cities, there will be local labs, or the extension service, the land grant university in your area usually has one, or one of the universities with an ag department will often have one. You send it off to them and you tell them what you want to know. What I recommend to people is to get sort of the big ones, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, as well as micronutrients, and it'll tell you what you need. And then it'll give you back a recommendation. You on the form usually will have something like, what are you trying to grow? What are your goals? And you'll say, I'm growing vegetables in this bed. And it's irrigated, whatever other information you need, you provide to them. And they'll send you back recommendations saying, okay, you're good on phosphorus and potassium, but oh, you know what? You could really use a half a pound of iron and you could really use 3 pounds of nitrogen. And then you can go out and buy the fertilizer and put it in your garden and make sure you are specifically meeting the needs of your plants. This is really important so that, one, we're not over applying and leading to fertilizer pollution issues, which are big problems in a lot of places. And two, we're not under applying and robbing our plants of the nutrients that they need. Now, if you don't want to go out and use a synthetic fertilizer of some kind, you can also use compost or manures. The thing that you have to understand, though, is that the amount of nutrients in your compost and the amount of nutrients in your manures is going to be less than a synthetic fertilizer. And by the time it's plant available, by the time the plant takes it up, the plant doesn't care. It's looking for ammonia or ammonium nitrate, or it's looking for superphosphate or whatever of these other nutrients that are in plant available forms. So what happens when you put out an organic fertilizer, whether it's a green manure or a compost or whatever it is, microorganisms in your soil will start breaking that down and eating it and processing it. And their waste products, the things they leave behind, tend to be plant available nutrients, which is great. But by volume, you're going to get a lot less. Whereas in a 100-pound bag of fertilizer, you may be able to get, 10, 20 pounds of nitrogen in that. You may need 200 or 500 or 1,000 pounds of a compost or a manure to get the same amount. So over time, it does build a healthier soil. Over time, it does add to the microbiota in your soil. But you just have to keep in mind that if you're severely deficient in, say, nitrogen and iron, it's going to take a while to get you to a place where you can grow your garden specifically or grow your garden very well. So what I like to recommend to people is get in shape first. Go out and buy a bag of synthetic fertilizer, put it out, and get the nutrient status of your soil fixed. And then you can manage it long term as organically as you want, because you'll be constantly feeding it with compost and manures and other organic products that the microorganisms will have time to process and time to build into the soil. But if you're severely deficient, you're like, oh, you know what, I'll put out some compost and then go ahead and plant my tomatoes. Those tomatoes are going to continue to mine nutrients out of the soil faster than that compost can keep up with replenishing them. So in the long term, you're always going to be playing catch up. You're always going to be a little bit deficient and a little bit behind on nutrient status. And over time, that really depletes and damages the soil. So we're better off getting in shape, getting everything where we want it to be, and then maintaining organically or however we want to in the long run. So in terms of garden soils, like look at how we can amend them, whether it's adding gypsum, depending on where you are, or compost, or whatever else your soil needs. This is a great time before you fill your gardens with plants to test your soil and to make sure that you have what your soil needs for your plants before you go in and really get going with your spring garden. So I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to get a drink of water and make sure that I still have a voice for the rest of this. And when I come back, I'm going to give you a couple more garden tips, but stay tuned for the mid-roll. I've got a really exciting announcement that I can't wait for you to hear. We'll be back in a sec. Well, hey there. Welcome to the mid-roll. I'm glad to see you here. Hey, if you want to connect with Planthropology, you can do it all the places. I am on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter as Planthropology, or some variation thereof. I'd love it if you'd follow me and connect. I like talking to listeners, and I want to hear your thoughts for the show, and social media is a great way to do that. I'm also on the TikTok machine as the Plant Prof for now. We'll see what happens with the TikTok machine and what certain people decide that, we're going to be able to do or not do with it in the long term. That's okay. For now, I am the Plant Prof there. And I would love for you to connect with me there as well. Thanks so much to the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science for supporting the show. Thanks to the Davis College of Agriculture and Natural Resources here at Texas Tech for supporting me as well. It means the world to me. Thanks mostly to you, the listeners, for being a part of all this wonderfulness. If you'd like to contribute to the show, there are a lot of ways you can do it. You can head over to Podchaser or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere else and leave me a rating or review. If you're listening, whatever app that you're listening on, go ahead and grab your phone and pull it out and see if there's a way you can leave a rating and review. I would very much appreciate it. It helps me out and it gives me the warm fuzzies. If you have comments for the show, if you would like to suggest a guest or a topic, or if you think my slightly sick voice is either alluring or really annoying, send me an email at planthropologypod@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you there as well. And I would love to connect with you a lot. It's great. Any way that you can reach out, I wish you would. If you'd like to support the show in other ways, you can head to planthropologypod.com and click on merch and go to the Redbubble store and grab a sticker or a hat or a t-shirt or a hoodie or something. And that's awesome. There's some fun stuff. And I'm actually about to start commissioning a couple of friends to do some new artwork for the merch store and for the podcast. And I cannot wait for you to see some of this stuff. So excited. You can also head over to buymeacoffee.com/planthropology, and for the price of a cup of coffee, you can help provide caffeinated goodness for myself and my staff here at the Texas Tech Greenhouse and Horticultural Gardens. It would mean the world to all of us. But real quick, I have such a big announcement. So over the past year or so, I've been working with a publisher called Squid Books to write a children's book about plants. Y'all, I'm so happy and so excited, just beside myself. This book is called Plants to the Rescue, and it's about some of the big challenges we face as a species and as a global ecosystem, like climate change and food supply and pollution and water shortages and droughts and things like that. And the book is all about the cool current technologies, all the cool plant biology, all the science that's going into using plants to solve some of our big problems. The book is called Plants to the Rescue, and it's available for pre-order anywhere you like to get your books, online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Walmart. It comes out July 11th, but pre-orders are live now. There's a link to the book in the description of this episode, and it would mean the world to me if you would pick up a copy of this and read it with your kids. I'm so proud of this project. Neon Squid has been wonderful to work with. Macmillan Kids has been wonderful to work with. And the illustrator for this book, Brian Lambert, he is off the charts good. The artwork is gorgeous, and I can't wait for some of y'all to see it. So I would love it if you would go check out Plants to the Rescue. Again, you can find it anywhere you like to buy books. You can pre-order now, and it comes out July 11th. And like it or not, you're going to hear a lot more about it from me. But for now, let's jump into some garden tips, and we will finish out this episode with 3 more, what I hope are really, really good spring garden tips. All right, we're back. So, another really good thing you could think about doing this time of year is adding trees to your garden. Now, trees are one of those things that you're not going to plant every year. Shrubs are one of those things you're not going to plant every year. But if you've been looking at, I'd like to add a couple of fruit trees in my backyard, or I could really use a new shade tree in the front yard, early spring is really the best time to do this. It gives the tree time to root in and start growing and start really developing a healthy root system, healthy foliage before it gets really, really hot in the summer. Trees establish much better if you plant them when it's cool, but when they're not going to necessarily be subjected to several hard freezes in a row. Now, you can dormant plant trees, and that can really happen anytime during the winter. But if we're at this point in the season and you're seeing that there's beautiful trees at your garden center, it's a great time to pick them up. Another good thing you could do is prune the trees and shrubs that you have. Now, there's many reasons we prune a tree. The first one is for the health of the tree. So you would go in and do things like remove dead wood or diseased wood or branches that cross into the middle of the tree, rub on one another, and can cause damage. We also want to prune for safety. Are there big dead branches hanging over your driveway or over your house or over a sidewalk, something that might hurt someone or cause property damage? Those should come out. Third, we should really prune for access. So, do you like to mow your lawn around your trees, or work in your garden, or walk down the sidewalk without braining yourself? Yeah, all those things are important. So, we can raise the crown of our plant. We can make sure that we have good access everywhere we're going. And then finally, we prune for the aesthetics of the plant. Do you want your tree to look better? Are there ways you could open up the canopy or raise the canopy or clear it up so that the tree just looks better overall? All of those are perfectly acceptable and really good reasons to prune your plants, to prune your trees. Now, a couple of caveats here. You want to do it before it gets too hot. You don't want to remove more than 20 to 25% of the overall canopy or the live canopy of a plant. Dead wood can come out at any time. Like, you can always remove dead wood. And in fact, you should, because it can cause a lot of problems. You want to make sure that you're making good pruning cuts and cutting outside the branch collar. So if you look at where a branch connects to the plant, you'll see a little piece at the top that looks like someone kind of took the bark and pinched it. And then you'll see sometimes a little mound on the bottom side. That's called the branch collar and the branch bark ridge. You want to cut outside of that. Okay, you want to make sure that you're leaving that intact. That is the spot where most of our active growth happens on a tree trunk, and that damage will be sealed over the most quickly that way. You also want to use a 3-cut pruning method for any branch over about 2 inches in diameter so that you don't have a situation where bark just tears down the side of your tree. So you'll come out about 4 inches from your branch bark ridge or your branch collar. Make an upcut from the bottom up about, say, 10 to 25% of the way through the branch. You'll come out another 4 or 5 inches and go ahead and cut from the top down and cut that branch off. So if it starts cracking and splitting, you essentially have a rip stop. So where the bark starts tearing, it'll stop at your first upcut. And then you go closer to where that branch collar is and remove the stump. That's your basic, again, procedure for any branch over 2 inches in diameter. I'll post a video in the descriptions of how to do this in case you would like to go watch that for reference. You also don't, in general, want to paint your pruning cuts. And this is a little controversial, but data has shown and research has shown that actually painting over or sealing over these cuts can slow the healing and the compartmentalization process for that plant. The one exception that in my book is still worth painting your cuts. And when I say paint, I'm not saying like go grab some bright yellow paint and paint over it. They sell pruning seal spray, which is essentially like tar in a can. It's kind of like Flex Seal, so you could, turn a screen door into a boat or paint over your cuts on your tree. Is in oaks in Texas. We have a disease called oak wilt in Texas that is spread through roots, but also through sort of wounds on the tree. So pruning cuts, breakage, things like that. And it's spread by this little beetle that picks up the fungus on one tree and spreads it to another. They're most active usually about mid-February through about the first hard freeze or two. So, but spring is really when they're the most active and where the fungus is growing the fastest and when they can spread oak wilt. And it's fatal on all oaks, though we do see some resistance in some of the white oaks. Uh, if you cut on your oak tree, especially in Texas and especially during the growing season, you want to prune or seal those pruning cuts just to keep those little beetles out and to help slow the spread of oak wilt. It's not foolproof. Again, it can spread in different ways, but that's a major infection center. But aside from your oaks, and aside from places where oak wilt and similar diseases are active, don't paint your cuts. Just let the tree seal over naturally. They sort of do that anyway. Okay. The next thing to do is look at mulching. Have you mulched? Have you put down enough mulch? Have you refreshed your mulch? Have you fluffed your mulch up and make sure it's ready to go? You need to do the thing. A 3 to 5 inch layer of mulch in your garden, so say 10 centimeters or less, is going to make you more successful in your garden in so many ways. It helps retain moisture. It helps suppress weed growth. It keeps the soil cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter. But there are some things to keep in mind. What are you putting down? Make sure you have a good type of mulch. Now, bark mulch or any kind of other organic mulch over time will sort of go away, but that's actually not a bad thing. It goes away because microbes are breaking that organic material down and turning it into nutrients for your soil. So that's a good thing. Bark mulches are excellent. There's lots of different kinds, from pine bark to shredded cypress and shredded cedar. You want something that's fairly small and fairly well broken up so that when it rains, those pieces kind of lock together a little bit and they don't float away. Big chunks of pine bark mulch, which is really common in some places, tends to float and move and can cause some problems. But there's all kinds of other mulches. You can use a rock mulch. You can use pecan shells. You can use all kinds of things. Just make sure that it's as much as possible, like disease-free, that there's no weed seeds in it, that there's no fungus, that it's safe to walk on if you're going to be walking in that area. And then it's not going to make the effects of summer heating and heat islands worse, okay? So rock mulches are fine. Just make sure that you're covering up that rock as much as you can with like leaves, with plant canopy, so that it's shaded, so it doesn't absorb heat all day and radiate it back at night. The last thing that I really think about as I'm going into spring is, what am I going to plant? And either I'm going to start my plants inside, 4 to 6 weeks before they're ready to go out. So some of your indoor starts for your vegetables or whatever else probably should already be going at this point. But I think it's important to really plan out your garden. It makes you a lot more successful in the long run. It makes it easier to manage it. It makes it easier to water it and fertilize it and grow things that you actually like. All that stuff's important. So a couple of tips for planning. Make sure you put things that have similar growth requirements together. And by growth, I mean light, temperature, water, fertility. Okay. So if you have a bed that has, say, agave or some kind of really drought-tolerant plant, probably don't put your tomatoes in there with it, right? Because either you're overwatering your agave and your cactus or whatever else, or you're underwatering your tomatoes, or you're over-fertilizing your native drought-tolerant plants or under-fertilizing your tomatoes. Group things together by their usage and by their needs, and it makes it a lot easier to be efficient in your landscape, both in terms of what you're applying to the landscape and your time. Because turns out, folks, your time is one of the only non-renewable resources. You can't get it back. And so you should enjoy the time you spend in your garden. It shouldn't be a burden. And so a good plan about, okay, I'm going to grow 10 tomato seedlings this year because I think I want about 10 tomato plants. You can grow more than that than you want, if you want to, and then give them to your friends, or you can grow less and then think, oh no, I wish I had 3 more tomatoes or whatever, right? So plan out your garden. Have ideas of what you want to plant where and how much. It's kind of a fun, just sort of like, I don't know how to say it, like almost spiritual discipline, a point of focus and zen as you kind of build your landscape and build your environment around you. It's your opportunity to look at your garden, whether your garden is a bunch of pots on your apartment balcony or a well-manicured 1-acre landscape. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Wherever it is that you're putting your plants in, wherever it is that you're going to start gardening, this is your space. You have the control to make it what you want it to be, to improve your quality of life through it. So having a good plan, a well thought out plan, and really a good design will make you so much more successful in any garden or landscape endeavor. So, y'all, I hope that you get to do some gardening this year. I hope you're ready for spring. I know I am. I'm super excited, and I hope you're doing well. Thanks again for listening. You know that I love you folks, and you know that I do this for you, that I love each and every one of you, and that I'm so excited that you listen to this show. I appreciate it more than I could ever tell you. So thanks for being a part of it, and thanks for making it so much fun, and for all the cool interactions and everything else. Thanks again to the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science. Thanks to you, the listener. Go check out Plants to the Rescue. It would really mean a lot to me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the book whenever you get it in the future. Y'all are the best. Keep being really cool plant people. Keep being kind to one another. If you have not, at this point, been kind to one another, maybe give that a try. It's kind of great. Y'all are awesome, and I will talk to you soon.